It's now 5:30. I'll now call the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. We'll go ahead and skip the invocation and go to the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask Vice Chair Bree King to go ahead and lead us in the pledge.
Please stand.
Moving on to item number 4. Carmela, roll call, please.
Chairperson Zurcher,
Here.
Vice Chairperson King,
Here.
Commissioner Rutherford. Here. Commissioner Rankin.
Here.
Commissioner Evans.
Here.
Commissioner Griffiths. Here. Commissioner Laney.
Moving on to item number 5, approval of minutes from the June 12th, 2023 regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the June 12th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to announcements. Do we have any announcements just from staff? All right. Moving on to, we'll skip public hearing items. There's no public hearing items, and we'll go straight into action items. First item on the agenda is action item 8A, amendment of Planning and Zoning Commission bylaws to include Town Code 13-28-020 Bravo verbiage. And then presenting this evening is Ernest Ruby. He's the Deputy Director for Development Services. Ernest, go for it.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, Commission. If you recall, back in June the 8th exactly, we had a board training that was presented by our legal team and other staff members. And at that board training, it was discovered that our very own Planning Zoning Commission hadn't been following the rules of the zoning code, and in specifically, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, the code section 1328-020 as in boy, and that basically talked about re-election of a chair and vice chair pursuant to the Chapter 13 code, and so that's why we're here tonight. There's an amendment proposed to the bylaws of the Planning Zoning Commission that would bring those elections, if you will, in line with what the town code requirements are. So that is the item before you tonight. There's been some discussion on why not look at the entirety of the bylaws. And if that's the commission's desire, pleasure, we could do that. This is not the point in time to do that. However, we're here to vote on the amendments to Planning and Zoning Commission bylaws as item A. So if there's a will on the part of the commission to relook at the bylaws, we can certainly set up first a work session with the commission, potentially with the council, with the results of any of your changes, proposed changes to the bylaws. So we'd be happy to do that. But right now we're here to look at the language that is going to be added to the bylaws. And with your permission, I will read that to you. The commission shall elect its own chair and vice chairman from its membership, each of whom shall serve for a period of 1 year from the date of election. Upon the expiration of the term of office of the chairman, or any event where the office shall become vacant, the vice chairman shall automatically become chairman, and an election shall be held for the office of vice chairman. Over time, this practice was somewhat forgotten and not followed by the commission. There's several boards that hadn't actually followed it, but in terms of us, it's the P&Z Commission. The bylaws are now being amended to follow Chapter 13. So moving forward, this election process will be followed per the town code. Be glad to answer any questions you might have. We've had extensive conversations with the town attorney, and I think some of you have also spoken to either Mr. Legler or Mr. Drake. So we'd be glad to answer any questions you might have at this time.
All right. Thank you, Ernest. We'll start with questions. First, Commissioner Laney.
I'm on. Ernest, I am adamantly opposed to a portion of this bylaw, and I would like to know, it's town code, so it would have to change the town code. Can we do that tonight, or do we have to go through a very long, lengthy process?
Commissioner Laney, the town code has been in place for some time, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Drake, has been in place. We are simply matching the town code by amending the bylaws at this point.
So we can't amend them if they're in opposition to the town code?
As I believe I mentioned earlier, if it's the will of the commission to have a work session with proposed changes to the bylaws, we could certainly do that and bring it forward, not only to our legal department, but also move it forward to the council with your proposed changes. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Commissioner Evans?
I'm sort of in alignment here with Commissioner Laney. In looking at the job description, if you will, of the chairman or chairperson and vice chairperson in the town code, I think it only represents about 30% of the job that the chairperson does. Besides, wielding a gavel and going through Robert's rules and an orderly meeting, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work, whether in talking to citizens, coordinating with council, coordinating with staff, being kind of the CEO of the commission, if you will. So I too am opposed to an automatic, transition every year. However, we make those views known. I think the work session idea is terrific. And I understand, too, the need for the town to standardize its boards and commissions in terms of their roles, and maybe if we're not as special as I think we are. But anyway, those are my views on that, and I would prefer to see a work session than deal with it tonight and just get all the views out and see where we go. And it might be we wind up where you're recommending tonight, but I'd like to have a little more discussion on it.
Commissioner Evans, rest of the commission, it's certainly your prerogative to either adopt or deny the bylaw changes tonight. And the bylaw changes are not going to reflect on what the code says and what we need to do to move forward with the election of officers, unfortunately. So we will move forward with that based on your vote, whether yay or nay on the bylaw changes, and would entertain from the commission direction for that workshop session so that we could, in its entirety, go over the bylaws.
And probably doing it sooner rather than later, so we just get it done and out of the way.
Yeah, I will chat with, I apologize. I should have introduced our new director to not only the commission, but also to the town. Donna is here. Donna Kennedy has taken over as the new Development Services Director. She's a little bit hobbled right now after an accident and broke her ankle, but she's been here for 3 weeks now, 4 weeks, going on a month. And so Donna is available. We can confer with her, chat with her to see what her direction is moving forward. But absolutely, we can accommodate that work session, I believe.
Commissioner Rankin?
So basically in this, the only thing that's really happening that we haven't done, because I think since Matt and I came in 13 and 14 or whatever, it's been almost 10 years, we've had basically 2 chairmans in that period of time. Has it determined that we were doing something that was wrong? I mean, by not having the bylaws, but it seems like everything's flowed pretty good as far as the board is concerned. And I'm just wondering, I understand what they're doing to spread the chairmanship and vice chair around, but it doesn't seem as though we have malfunctioned in any way. I'm going to use that word. I don't know if that's right or not. And it just seems like if this is what we want to do, then that's what we should do. But I just want to make sure that what we've been doing in the past has been working and has worked pretty well. Matt's been chairman now for I don't know how many years, and the previous chairman had been around for, I think, even more.
Well, real quick, Larry, when I was actually doing the math on this one, so Rick Dusky was chair when you and I came on. Then it was John Yater for, I think, 2 years, and I became chair.
John do it for 2 years?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Because I was doing the math, and I think I have been chair for 6 years now.
But I just want to make sure that it's not being looked at as from the town that we were, doing something that we didn't think we should have been doing. And I think that also if we had been doing something that should have been changed, gosh, it's been 10, 15 years now for this all of a sudden to come up. But I hope that what we can do is keep it simple. The P&Z board has functioned, I think, well, and to keep it simple, I hope that we don't get it too complicated.
Thank you, Commissioner Rankin, and I think I agree with you. If anything, the P&Z Commission, under the leadership of not only Chairman Zucker this time, but the previous chairs, have operated so well that it was just continued forward. So I don't think it casts any aspersions on the commission, on the chair, on anything else. I think things were done so well that everybody thought, well, let's just continue it along. And it wasn't until our June 8th board training session that our administrative supervisor said, wait a minute, after going through the code and the bylaws, I have discovered a discrepancy. When that was brought forward, it wasn't, again, an aspersions of anything on the commission or how it's been handled. It was simply trying to bring it back in line with the code, which has been in place for many years now.
So I guess, again, is this coming down that from senior staff that we need to make this change, or is this coming down from the council that we need to make this change?
This is coming from, again, as the result of the training session where it was discovered that we were in arrears, if you will, in terms of our annual election of chair and vice chair. So again, that's what it's attributed to. And we just are trying to get in line with the section of the code, Chapter 13, that talks about the election of board chairs and vice chairs. And Director Kennedy, did you have something to add?
Thank you, Ernest, and Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. If I could do some clarity, Donna Kennedy, the Development Services Director, as mentioned. Most communities have this law in place in their code to have it a year, and that's how most of us know how to go by, and the fact that it was discovered. I would recommend just changing it, and let's have a committee, or let's go through everything word by word, because if you go through too quickly, you're going to wish you did something else. So if we do a work study with you, we can really go through the document, get the verbiage. I would vote now to get in compliance, and then after that, have recommendations moving forward. Here's what we want to recommend and have a work study session on. And if any of the elements of it that you see you want to change, have it documented tonight. So then when we move forward with the work study, we'll address those issues. And we're going through some code changes right now as we speak, but we want to be in compliance. So I think it would benefit all to have that vote to be in compliance with the caveat that we're going to modify the bylaws at a future date to what your wishes would want to address. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Griffiths?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First and foremost, welcome to the town, Ms. Kennedy. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Ernest, for your presentation. I have two questions. Number one, the Town Code, Chapter 13, where it talks about the year now getting in compliance with the code. There's no actual month that this is supposed to take place. So when do you see that happening? Should we not insert a month?
Commissioner Griffith, thank you. Very good question. At this point, staff has been directed to move forward with the election as item B on your agenda. So that would be the start month. August would be the start month of any new terms. Again, as we move forward, suggestions might be that that August date is not the date that needs to be the date of record, if you will. I know we, in January, elected our chair and vice chair, and it was felt that maybe that should continue for the year. But again, because the code needs to be adhered to, that's why item B is on your agenda for the election of a new chair and vice chair today.
So does the code take precedent over bylaws that don't match?
Yes, ma'am, it does. And
You?
Mr. Drake is here. Maybe he could comment on that if you need the legal opinion, not just a layman.
And personally, I'm of the opinion that I support making this change and becoming in a match compliance with the code. I see how important that is in other jurisdictions with other processes, and it's extremely important. So I do support making this change tonight.
Thank you.
Ernest?
Hold on just a second. Commissioner Rutherford?
Well, I was going to suggest that since the town code takes precedence over the bylaws, why have to have new bylaws published and all that when it's not what we want eventually? Why not go directly to a work study session and suggest changes in the town code to conform to what we feel works for us? And then if there are other changes, make them all at one time. That's one possibility.
I'll be honest with you, that's how I'm leaning this evening. I think honestly, I think communication on this was poor from staff, and I feel that we should have had a work study session before this even came to this commission. I realize it's town code, but the fact that it hasn't been enforced in over probably 12 to 15 years, I think says something. And I believe that we need to have a sit-down with staff, with the council, to discuss this further before we can even move forward here this evening. That's just how I'm feeling, and I'm getting that from some of the other commissioners. Hold on, let me go to Commissioner Evans, Commissioner Rankin, then we'll Commissioner Rutherford. In that order, please.
Why couldn't you have a code that said this, this, and this for these boards and commissions, but this for that other commission?
Commissioner Evans, that is a possibility, and as you probably know, we are revising Chapter 13 as we speak. That could be one of the amendments that we look at as we move forward. Again, that's not our charge right now to reevaluate the code. We're simply trying to come into conformance with the code and our bylaws. And as I mentioned earlier, it's entirely the prerogative of the commission to vote yea or nay on the bylaw changes at this time. That being said, however, we'll move to item B, and we're told by administration and legal that we need to move forward with the election today. Or recommendation, yes, sir.
Ernest?
Hold on. Commissioner Rankin, then you.
So with our vote, are we just voting on the P and Z board, or are we voting on boards across?
Good question, Commissioner Rankin. You are voting just on the bylaws for the Planning and Zoning Commission. There's also another board that needs to amend their bylaws as well, and actually they did it at their last meeting. It was the Board of Adjustment. And so they move forward to come into compliance with the Chapter 13, with the section of the code that was referenced earlier. So you are just voting on the planning and zoning bylaws tonight in item A.
Commissioner-
Ernest. Ernest,
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I was just reminded that it was pointed out, I believe, by Chairman Zucker, that this was actually on the consent calendar for the council at their last meeting, and that was a little bit premature. That will be going back to the town council after your determination tonight on the 24th of August for their vote on moving it forward as well.
Ernest, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We had an election in January of this year, and we elected a chair and a vice chair. Does that mean we have to turn around and do it again? That election is no longer valid for a year?
Commissioner Laney, very good question. Yes, we did have the election in January this year where we elected Chairman Zucker and Vice Chair King. That was in January. According to the coming up to the code requirements, we are required to take that vote tonight, and it begins the new year for the elected chair and vice chair to bring it into compliance.
However, in this code, there is no month stated at all. So,
That, you're entirely correct. There is no month stated, but in order to bring it into compliance with the code, we've been told to move ahead with not only item A on your agenda, which is the bylaws vote, but also with item B, which is the election of officers. And I believe that that's one of the things that you all may move forward is the date of the election. We may have some turnover. If we do, it starts that clock ticking again. For example, if someone were to leave, it would prompt a new election, whether it be the vice chair or the chair, to fill that role. So whatever month, I think it's a floating, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Drake, it's kind of a floating depending on when the elections take place.
I'm strongly in favor of tabling both of these tonight. I'm frankly feeling a bit jammed that the way these were kind of presented to us. Won't go into what I think of 7S from last week, but I do feel we're just being kind of steamrolled here, and I don't like it.
Commissioner Evans, it's entirely your prerogative to vote yes or no on item A. But again, our legal department has instructed us to move forward with item B and have that election tonight. So I would just put that out.
Going to vote?
Vice Chair King?
Hi there. How's everyone doing? All right. I appreciate everybody coming tonight. Welcome, Director. We're happy to have you. I hope you start feeling better soon. I am listening to these arguments here, and I understand the need to bring code into compliance so there's not discrepancies across various boards. That makes complete sense. Totally get that, and I'm in agreement with that. I think when it comes to the issues of whether this should be an automatic election from a vice chair to a chair, that needs to be more properly vetted. I believe that this town code, as it reads, might need some clarification as to what happens when a chair goes out. When does the year start for the vice chair to come up? I also believe that we might want to look at the term, if it's maybe 1 year or 2 years or something of that sort. So while I do see the need to conform this to a process so it's consistent, I think that Ms. Griffiths had a good point of, if there's already the precedent, right, that the code supersedes the bylaws, then we kind of already are there for what that is. And so we should probably put some recommendations on the table tonight to see what is it that we think as a board here that we might like to change with what we have here, regardless if this passes or doesn't pass. So some recommendations that I would like to have on the record would be to understand if, or vet if it's an automatic transition or not. I do believe that it's wonderful to have, young citizens come up and have the ability to go into positions like this, but it's not something that everyone can do because it takes some grooming, it takes knowing how to adhere to laws, it takes research, and that's not something, that just anybody can do. So while I was opposed initially to the automatic, the more I thought through it, I think that can be open to debate. With respect to a year, because there is so much grooming that goes and is involved with such a transition from vice chair to chair, I think we might want to look at the term. I know it works well in other jurisdictions and other boards for a year, but I also know it works well as 2 years, sometimes 3 years. And then again, we need to understand what the timing looks like. If a chair goes out, does that mean that your year gets cut short, or do you get a year and 4 months, or what does that mean? So those are my comments.
Very good points, Vice Chair King. In terms of the one-year term, that's what's pointed out in 1328020B. Now, that could be one of the bylaw changes that is proposed by the commission, if that's your pleasure. And if that's the case, as we're evaluating Chapter 13 for updates, that might be one of the recommendations, is because of the value of the training and the experience on this board, that might be something that you would suggest to council, extending that from 1 year to 2 years or 3 years as a max, whatever your determination is on that. And I totally concur with you. This is a very important board, but you only meet once a month, so that training and that experience happens possibly 12 times a year. There are some months where we don't have a meeting because there's a lack of items. So that is entirely something that could be moved forward by the commission in terms of changes that you would propose, whether it be the 1 year extended to 2 or beyond that, what the automatic term is of the vice chair taking, taking control of the chairmanship, whether that new year, and it probably should be identified, whether that new term means it's a new year for that person in that new capacity. I believe that's what the code intended, but not being an expert on that, I would defer to legal to see if that was their interpretation. But basically, you can propose, potentially if we do the workshop session, and propose amendments, not only to the bylaws, but possibly changes to the code, Chapter 13 itself, in this case for your board, because of the value of the board and the experience and the knowledge that goes with being either the chair or the vice chair. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I do have a question for Stephen.
Sure, go ahead.
Maybe staff can also answer this. So it feels as though we're being pushed into this, you have to do this right now, today. It hasn't been followed in 12 to 15 years. What's the harm in waiting another month to table this, to have a discussion, change the code, and then get it, and have that discussion? I don't see the rush for this here this evening. And that's really my question to you. Why the rush?
I understand your frustration. I hear the frustration of the commission, and you and I have talked about this in one-on-one, or with Ernest, I should say. So I wouldn't say there's a rush, but the town code does take precedence to the bylaws. The town code says what it says, and it's said that since at least 1998. So if you don't do this, I don't want you to feel pressured to have to do this. There's been a lot of questions of why do we have to do this, and what if we don't do it? Well, this is really more of a policy decision, and it's a policy decision that comes down from the council that appoints you, that they want it done this way. Now, I'm not, there's no right or wrong way to do it. You guys bring up valid arguments and valid concern. You guys can't have a joint session with them or talk about it. But in the meantime, I don't know what you guys are proposing. If you're proposing not doing, then how do you want to function?
I think honestly, from what I'm hearing is that, again, the communication on this has been very poor. I'm good at
And I can
admonish staff and even council for that matter. This has been poor. The communication has been poor. We should have had a work study session before this even got to this meeting. And that is what I think, and I'm hearing, we should do before we even move forward this evening on this whole thing.
And that's your prerogative to take, as a board, to take that position. I understand that. But you guys are asking questions, well, and one of the other issues was raised, well, why don't we just go right into changing the code? Well, with all due respect, that's not the charge of this board, and I hate to be the one to tell you this, but you guys don't have the authority to change the town code. So if that's something you want, then you have to work through the council to do that. As we've discussed, you guys are appointed by the council. You will serve at the discretion of the council. We talked about this ad nauseum at the June 7th training and went through these things. So I enjoy working with this board. I don't want there to be any friction among the board and among staff. Ernest has laid this out very well. Donna's here new. We have staff here. So you raise valid questions.
And I mentioned this in our conversation before. At that training session, even Ivan brought up the fact that we could potentially look at changing code.
Correct.
And so I thought, okay, maybe that is what we would probably do, and that wouldn't even come, before us this evening like this. This was kind of a shock, to be quite honest with you, a big surprise, because it's like, again, it feels very rushed. There was no communication, and I think therein lies the biggest issue.
And I understand your frustration, and I've told you that. And I think probably I've worked with and alongside Ivan long enough. What he probably meant is certainly the town could explore changing the code. But again, that's not for you. This commission does not change town code.
We know that.
If you want to make recommendations to the council, then we can move forward with that. But what we need to do is we need to decide, the commission has work to do. Fortunately, it's not anything beside this tonight. But you guys need to decide as a body what you want to do. But to answer your basic questions, that's what the town code says. It doesn't, since the bylaws are in conflict with the town code overrides the bylaws, so.
Could you read to me that section of the town code that says board and commission chair and vice chair elections have to be held in that board or commission's August meeting?
It doesn't say that. And to answer your question, you had an election, and now the proposal is that you have an election because this now is a change from the way you've been operating. So as Ernest has correctly pointed out, it'll start a timeline moving forward.
The courtesy of a heads up and a little time to think about it would have been appreciated.
And I understand, as you're all my clients, in defense of my clients that you're attacking, you are really attacking the messengers in this case. And I think out of professionalism, you should keep that in mind.
Commissioner Griffiths?
Thank you,
Present company
Mr.
included.
Chair. Point of clarification, Ernest. So the action agenda item 8A, we as a commission can vote tonight to deny that, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Or we can vote to accept it, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That denial and or acceptance moves forward to town council, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
So if this 8A action item was to be denied tonight, council can certainly override our denial and approve it.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct, my understanding.
And we could also table this until such time that we have a joint session.
I defer to Mr. Drake.
What's the question?
Can we table this until such time that we can have a further discussion about this with council and just better communication and so forth?
If you want to table it, it creates its own set of problems, but it's certainly something that you can do.
Commissioner Rankin?
If we vote down 8A, that kicks out 8B also, correct?
Actually, no, not necessarily. No, you can still move forward with 8B. From what I'm hearing, it doesn't sound like you want to move forward with any of it, so. Yeah, and
What is that, Donna? I mean,
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. What we would like to see is a vote thumbs up or down on this, but with recommendations so that we can start doing what you want to do, is to talk through what the Vice Chair had suggested, and we'd work on that immediately. So tabling it would only further, it would get us to the point where we want to go anyway, but the council needs to see a yes or a no on this so that they can make their decision at their event. And if they see all your recommendations, they may table it. They may say, we don't want to vote on this until we hear from you. So I think that would be a motion to put on with the vote. So yes or no, but if it's no, why? So you have legitimacy to do that. And either way, put your recommendations that were stated, because those are certainly items we want to further discuss with you.
okay. So, hearing staff, let's go ahead and make recommendations. Then we can, just go from there. And then have those on the record, and then I think that's a discussion we need to have here this evening. And whether we vote yea or nay, we have the recommendations on the record.
And Mr. Chair, you can certainly say we would like to see this back to us. And they would, it's up to them to say, yeah, we want to honor what your recommendation is. So we all agree, we want to talk this through, but, if you vote non-compliance, we're going to be operating in non-compliance. And if it's brought to our attention, we're new staff, both Ernie and I, certainly we want to be in compliance with the code. And I think that's the overall goal, but we also know we need to change the code. So it wasn't a matter of saying it's not legit or we don't honor your services, because certainly planning commissions are the most important commission in every city. And, but we want to bring it to the level that you need and you desire. So, and we're happy to do that. But that would be the first number one, that you would like to see it return back for maybe future discussion.
Okay, thank you, Donna. So at this time, let's go ahead, and if the commissioners have recommendations, let's go ahead and hear them. Where do we want to start?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to repeat what some of the recommendations are that I believe should be further looked into is, number one, to have clarity on timing if, for unforeseeable reason, the chair resigns for whatever reason, when the year start point would start for the vice chair. That is not clear.
And I want to add chair and vice chair. The chair and vice chair should be either removed and/or resign.
Right. And then the second recommendation would to be possibly prolonging the term from 1 year to 2 years due to the significant, responsibility of a vice chair moving on. Those would be my two recommendations for now.
Commissioner Rutherford?
This might better come up in a work study, but I would like to see an annual election, but put a term limit. so that if there isn't an effective chairman, someone else can come in after a year.
And then I'd like to, one of the things that I'm just hearing, and I agree with Commissioner King and Commissioner Rutherford, I'd like to see either calendar year elections, so January, or fiscal year, so July. Either one of those two dates would be preferred. Commissioner Griffiths, did you have anything? Oh, we'll start down. Commissioner Rankin, do you have anything? Okay. Commissioner Evans?
I might be stealing Sandra's thunder here. We've talked about this previously, but along with Commissioner Rutherford, I would like to see a situation, I would vote for 3 terms, but whenever the election is, and I really think the town code needs to say it shall be in this month and not just poof, you need to do it today. But to have 3 terms, but basically voted on every year, so that if the outgoing chair says, I would like to stand for another year, the commission looks around and says, yes, that chairperson's been doing a good job. And you can do that twice after their first term, and after 3 terms, they're termed out. But you do have an election every year, and in fact, if a chair said, I'd like to continue, the commission would totally have the authority to vote them out if they disagree with, so it's kind of a 1-year look with a 3-year maximum term would be my recommendation, and certainly to insert into the town code the date that the elections have to be made, because it's just too amorphous and whatever.
Commissioner Laney?
I also would like to interject that no officer shall serve more than 3 consecutive terms in the same office. I would like that in there. And I also have objection to the automatic succession of the vice chair into the chairmanship. We could vote on that each year. But to have that wording in there, to me, it sounds like we are a monarchy and not a republic. Only royalties succeed each other. We don't do that.
Commissioner Laney, you would agree that the vice chair would succeed the chair automatically should the chair be removed or
Exactly.
resign?
But not just move up if they've been elected vice chair and they've served their term and they automatically move up to chair. No, I object to that. But yes, they would fill in if there is an opening.
Commissioner Laney, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I think you have some very, very valid points, and those are the details, I think, that need to be resolved and worked out in a work study session with those recommendations moving forward to council. Some of the things you're suggesting, for example, getting away from the 1-year annual term is going to require modifications to our code, of course. So those are the recommendations that can be made. We can bring those forward to council to see if that's their pleasure as well. So again, I would recommend that you make those kinds of recommendations as you move forward, whether it's a yea or nay vote, make those recommendations so that it will be on the record and we'll be moving forward to council, so they'll know your concerns and they'll also know what your recommendations are moving forward in terms of adjusting not only the bylaws, but the Chapter 13 code that covers the election of officers. So whether it's a 1-year term or a 2-year term or a succession of terms up to a term limit, as was mentioned, I would suggest you put those recommendations down so we can move them forward on your behalf to the council. As I think we can all see those are some very, very strongly held beliefs on your part, and we'd love to move those forward based on that.
Commissioner Griffiths?
Thank you, Chair. So Ernest, you've heard some very powerful details tonight concerning action item agenda 8A. Are you wanting us to make a motion and then list all of our agenda concerns where it's now collected and put into a format, sending it to council?
Commissioner Griffith, thank you for that question. Yes, I believe that's what we're recommending, is for you to, again, it's your prerogative on which way you vote, up or down, but also, if we move forward, taking those recommendations to council, creating the work study session where we can go over the entirety of the recommendations you're going to make. And there may be some that you don't see tonight. There may be some that you want to evaluate as you move forward, and as we potentially move forward into a work study session that will go to the council. So you may not have everything in its entirety tonight, and that's okay, but we can continue that dialogue if we move forward to the work study session to reflect what your recommendations and what your determination is tonight.
Commissioner
Thank you,
Griffiths.
Mr. Chair. So Ernest, not if we move forward, but when we move forward. And when do you anticipate a work study session possibly coming forward? Timeline?
I would ask Director Kennedy. She mentioned earlier that we'd be moving on this as soon as possible. So I would recommend in the next 2 weeks or so, we'll be able to put together the work study session. And at your time to appear or to be part of that, and we'll make sure we coordinate with everybody on that as we move forward.
And Donna, you had mentioned something earlier, if I can, because basically, and Commissioner Laney was just asking me, essentially, we're adding conditions to this motion, so to speak. But you had mentioned, Donna, that we can actually ask council that we see this back, correct?
That could be part of a recommendation.
Okay. Yeah, and definitely, I think that would be
And,
a very prudent recommendation.
If that's your will, and it sounds like that's what it is tonight. And to change our code, and I just remind the commission, it is a public hearing process. So it's not that, okay, we'll take it to council, they like it, it'll be done. It is a public hearing process. So that's why it may seem like it's rushed to you, but it's only because we know there's a timeline that's yet to be established for all of you, for all of us, to get this approved. So.
Okay. Commissioner King?
Thank you, Chair. I think one thing we can agree on is that the language as written is very unclear, and it needs to be refined and better articulated so that there is a very transparent understanding as to what, regarding annual elections, but term limits. I agree with Commissioner Laney where it says automatic, right? What does that mean, in which section? So I think tonight we all can at least come to understanding that regardless of how this works itself out, it should be refined not only for planning and zoning, but just in general as well. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, just to put it in perspective, we are now working on several code changes. So it's not that this is the only one. So I think this has come at the appropriate time so that we can take it all through and get this all updated, our code, because it is antiquated.
So in my math, this has been on the books for 25 years, since 98, correct?
Since at least that time, yes.
And who knows if it has ever been followed in that time?
Right. And Mr. Chair, that's what we've got a growing population now. We've got more people asking, and we have to, our hands are tied legally that, it does say in the code, but it's the timing to change the code. And they've done a terrific job over the years, but as you all know, you're starting to get, and just wait, there's going to be more projects coming forward. So let's get this all straight so for future generations, it's all clear from your input today and tonight and in the future.
Any other questions from the commission?
Mr. Chairman, it seems to me that our reluctance to approve this is based on feeling that it's being thrust upon us and lack of communication. However, the actions we took when we weren't in compliance can be forgiven as being minimal and not knowing. if we go forward with knowledge that we're not in compliance, I think that can be a very different thing. And our administrators and legal department are in a hot seat. And whether this is what we like or not, I think we would be better off to go ahead and approve it tonight, get into compliance, and insist on a work study, joint work study, where we can make our needs and the things that actually work for us known.
I'm inclined to agree with you, Commissioner Rutherford, and I do apologize. I'm not trying to shoot the messenger. I realize that it seems that way. I'm not trying to do that. It does seem like this is, oh, hey, look, we found a code we haven't been enforcing in 25 years, and you know what, you guys got to do it. And that's just, as Commissioner Rutherford alluded to, it's been, you know, it feels very rushed, and the lack of communication has been a little, has been disappointing. So, Commissioner Evans?
It has been cart before the horse. We do feel pressured. I think, you know, the council administration and the boards and commissions in a town like this all kind of have to behave like a family. And we all have our disputes and differences from time to time. And I very much respect Commissioner Rutherford's experience. So despite all my bravado, I guess you get what you want on the staff memo here. But it's been a good discussion, and I really do hope we have that work study session within 2 weeks, because sometimes when you vote for something, it can slip on the agenda a lot. I'm not accusing anybody of that, but please, 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 let's do that before the end of the month.
Because this is an action item, and normally I've always opened the floor to public comments with regard to action items, is there anyone from the public wishing to address this issue? Come on up, sir. Go ahead and please state your name for the record.
Steve Karros, Pronghorn Ranch. I worked for 3 municipalities. I know a flim-flam when I see it. I do thank you, Assistant Attorney, for exposing this gentleman's flim-flam, because you contradicted the heck out of him. 2 or 3 times you said this decision came from a training session, and then you, sir, identified it as coming from council.
Training session was a part of that, council.
Well, and when Commissioner Evans was talking, my thought was railroading, and that's what I'm watching. And like I said, I've worked for 3 different municipalities for many, many years, and rush jobs lead to broken results. And this is a huge rush job. Now, I have a question. Town Code 8, are you familiar with that?
So you're in the public comment period.
Town
Nobody's
co-
on this.
Okay, I'm sorry,
And
shouldn't
sir,
converse.
allow me to please proceed. If the chairman's not going to tell you, I'm going to tell you, you're under a public comment period. It's not a time for you to interrogate any of the commissioners or myself, so go on with your public comment.
Thank you.
You're
Town Code 8 states that the police department and the dispatch center that dispatches to the police department is required to enforce unlicensed solicitations, and they don't do that. I do not see the town attorney worrying about that. And that's a lot more important to us as the people than this rush job to get a vote in tonight. And the obvious decision here should be retroactive from the January vote. It's that simple. Okay, from now on, next January, it's a vote. We're not going to do this anymore. But I don't see that here. This is a rush job, and I don't like it. I don't like to see my town run this way. We don't rush stuff, you get broken results.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to comment on this matter? Seeing none, I'll close the floor to public comment, and we'll bring it back to the commission. At this time, is there a motion to approve amending the bylaws to include Town Code 13-28-020B and forward to the council for final approval with the recommendations that we discussed earlier? You can say simply so moved, and/or, or if you have anything else, if you don't want to do that.
Mr. Chair, I so move with the recommendations included.
All right. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, prior to the second, we had such lengthy discussion about several recommendations. I feel that we should have those stipulated or read back to us for approval, because I don't know what's going to be written to send out.
Let's see if Carmela, are you able to do that?
Yes, so I have recommendations from Commissioner Rutherford for annual elections and term limits. And you'll have to excuse me, I was just I'm going to listen back on video, but kind of just going with it. Chicken scratch here. Commissioner Rankin did not have any recommendations. Commissioner Evans, a definite month and 3 terms voted on every year. Commissioner Griffiths, none. Commissioner Laney, she had objections to the for the vice chair to be automatically the chair and would like that changed. And then 3 consecutive terms in the same office. Vice Chairperson King, clarity on the timing, when the year starts for the chair and vice chair, and a 2-year term. Chairperson Zurcher wants the dates to be either the calendar starting from January or fiscal year starting in July.
Also, my other recommendation is that council, we'd like to see this back from council. So with that read into the record, is there a second on the motion?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. A roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Rutherford? Commissioner Rankin?
Yes.
Commissioner Evans?
Yes.
Commissioner Griffiths?
Yes.
Commissioner Laney?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson King?
Yes.
Chairperson Zurcher?
Yes. Moving on to item 8B, expiration of chairman term of office and election of vice chairman per Town Code 13-28-020B.
Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the commission, the item before you, item B, is the election of new chair and vice chair. One point of clarification, if this is done today, that means August is the start date. If, for example, in January, one of you were to resign, then the ascension to, for example, the chairman's position would start on that date, if I'm correct, and it's an annual thing. So August is just where we're at now. It may change to different months in different years as the situations apply. So just wanted to make that clear for you.
Also, I'd imagine if town code were to change in between now and the end of the year, that would specify the month, and then we can move from there. Is that correct?
Correct.
We'd have to have a new election at that time?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Point of clarification, Ernest. So if we vote now for a chair and a vice chair, the chair resigns, gets hit by a bus, whatever, in July of next year, which leaves 1 month in the term of either the chair or the vice chair. So the vice chair would automatically assume the role of the chair. Would they be basically king or queen for a month?
Commissioner Evans, the way I understand it, and I will stand to be corrected if I'm wrong, is that the new term would begin at that point in time for a year going forward. So it wouldn't be for the shortest duration, it would be starting a new year.
So that would automatically change the month in which we vote every year as well?
Correct.
Thank you.
And again, this all could change too within
Yeah,
the
no, I
next few months. I mean, yeah. Commissioner Griffiths?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ernest, is there any reason why 8B cannot be brought forward as it already stands, with Mr. Zurcher as the chair and Bree as the vice chair? Or do we have to go through a new election?
Very good question, Commissioner Griffith. As I understand it, today is the date for a new election for chair and vice chair pursuant to following section 1328020B of our zoning code.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I respectfully disagree inasmuch as the bylaw changes that we're sending forward, that timeline hasn't been established yet. So what would the negative consequences be if we left it as is?
I would, excuse me, Mr. Chair.
I think from what I'm getting from Commissioner Griffiths is that basically you can make a motion to basically keep the status quo right now, correct? And that, and move forward with that.
Mr. Chair, that was going to be my statement, is you may re-nominate the folks that are in place at this point, and that would start the clock rolling for another year. It doesn't say you have to elect new chairman and a new vice chair today. You could carry forward and say we nominate the existing folks to carry forward.
Thank you, Ernest. With that, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to,
Hold on, Commissioner Rankin had a question, or did you have a comment? Okay. Okay, all right. All right. Go then, Commissioner Griffiths, go for it.
I make a motion to, for election of officers to retain Matt Zurcher as chair and Bree King as vice chair per our town code. Is that right?
If I may,
Yes.
Commissioner Griffith, may I make the suggestion that you nominate
Oh, got it.
for
You're right.
chair and for vice chair?
She technically does not have to, though. She doesn't have to. You don't have to in an election. She could literally just do what she just did. She doesn't need to. You can basically, it's a motion, you don't have to do a nomination process. If someone wants to keep the chair and vice chair, technically that's allowed.
I'll second Commissioner Griffith's
From what I
motion.
understand with Robert's rules, if someone wants to do that, we don't need to do a nomination.
If that's the case, I second Commissioner Griffith's motion.
And well, Stephen, what do you think?
Well, as the commission has it agenda-sized on 8B, it's for the expiration of the chairman of the term of office and the election of the vice chair. So,
I will make a new motion to nominate Matt Zurcher chair as new chair and Bree King as vice chair.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify, actually, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Rutherford? Commissioner Rankin?
Yes.
Commissioner Evans?
Yes.
Commissioner Griffiths?
Yes.
Commissioner Laney?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson King?
I abstain.
Chairperson Zurcher?
I'm also going to abstain. With a vote of 5 and 2 abstentions, we still get, so I still get reappointed, so thank you. Moving on to the term of vice chair. Any nominations for vice chair? Oh, we just
Motion
did?
was
We did.
for
I
both.
thought you did just me. I thought, okay, my mistake. That's what, okay, then we're good. All right, we are good, right? Okay,
Yes, the motion was for
okay, both,
Chair
okay.
Zurcher and Vice Chairperson King.
All right. All right. Sorry for the confusion there. Moving on to call to public. Item number 9, consideration of discussion of comments from the public. Those wishing to address the Planning and Zoning Commission need not request permission in advance. Action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or rescheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. So just some other things just to keep in mind. I know we have some people in the audience that want to address the commission. Please know that we cannot comment on anything that you are bringing forward this evening. to call to public. Anything that you say here this evening will be directed to staff for future, but we cannot address that, anything that is that you bring up this evening. So with that, is there anyone wishing to address the commission? I'll start with you, ma'am. And please state your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Jean Mata.
Go ahead and speak directly, right into the mic.
Okay. My name is Jean Mata. I live in the Quailwood subdivision, and I'm a member of the Prescott Valley Citizens Alliance, which is a local organization that advocates for strong public policy that prioritizes the needs of our citizens and which seeks to raise awareness about key issues we face as a region. So I'm before you tonight to raise concerns about the extraordinary number of zoning map change requests that seek to allow higher density land uses. Developers for Lakeshore 650, the Observatory, Clipper Courts, Change of Pace Senior Living Center, and a proposed rental community at Kachina and 69 will all seek a zoning map change in order to build higher density developments. This is in addition to the numerous zoning map change requests already approved for other developments in this town. Inarguably, landowners have the right to develop their land as zoned. This commission should not feel obligated to approve requests for zoning map changes. Commissioners should, however, feel obligated to maintain the rural character of Prescott Valley and to preserve the natural features and beauty of the landscape that make our town unique. Every new development impacts every existing resident. When a zoning change is approved to allow for higher density uses, the new development may offer nice amenities for future residents, but it can also negatively affect the residents currently living in surrounding neighborhoods and present quality of life challenges for the entire community. Higher density land uses also change the rural character of our town. Changing the zoning to allow for higher density uses will flatten the hills, mow down the grasslands, and obscure the sweeping vistas, forever altering the land and degrading some of the most significant qualities of our town. Once those features are gone, they're gone forever. So to recap, landowners have the right to develop their land as zoned. The town's rural character and the beauty of the area's natural landscape are worth protecting and preserving. Every new development impacts every existing resident. Degradation of the land is permanent. Bigger is not always better. When deciding to approve or deny zoning map changes, I hope you will always consider these points and the impact that your vote will have on current residents. And I see that Mr. Ruby and Ms. Kennedy are in the audience tonight. So I would hope that these points would be top of mind for them and their entire department as well. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Karros?
Steve Karros, Pronghorn Ranch. This is the primary reason I came tonight, to express my support for this commission and encourage you to continue to thoughtfully address those projects brought before you. I was especially pleased when this P&Z commission recently turned back the proposed VIA's development, and I acknowledge that your reasoning was very sound. I am disappointed that the town council overruled this commission at their very next meeting in the face of the appeal by the developer. Moreover, I am deeply concerned regarding just how the council did this. Based upon your definitive concerns, the town council, after hearing the appeal, should have shelved it for consideration to a combined executive or study session where your concerns could have been directly presented. The decision for the council to immediately override this commission in such fashion was disrespectful and a serious blow to your independence, and in reality has rendered this commission to be somewhat impotent, which is not good for Prescott Valley. Under our council manager form of government, involvement of the entire elected body ensures a more balanced approach to community decision-making and creates a professional blend between them, the town manager and this very important commission. This balance appears to be in the crosshairs of our mayor. It appears that our town government is slowly being manipulated towards what is known as the strong mayor council form of government. And that was historically rejected by all localities within Arizona, way back in 1912. This was to avoid the East Coast style of government that has invited so much corruption. Just some of my observations over the past few years that have given me this rise to these concerns are as follows. The mayor violated town code and overtly involved himself in the errant effort to dismiss Police Chief Rosser. The obvious and apparent conflict of interest leading to the rezoning of the mayor's Baja Court property, which has subsequently led to numerous similar rezoning efforts by developers. The continual haranguing and shaming the citizens of Prescott Valley on his numerous platforms who object to the overly rapid growth in our community. His using those same platforms to discourage, actually discouraging the citizens from signing the ballot signatures initiative of a potential opponent. And most recently, this rejection of your VIA's project decision. We must remember that not only do you represent the best interests of the people of this community, but you are the people as well. I strongly encourage this commission to not allow this to pass. I'm not exactly sure how, but you must express your grievance against the method in which this commission was slighted by the mayor and council. Prescott Valley must maintain a purely council-manager form of government to ensure this professional blending that is essential to the safety and success of Prescott Valley. A strong, independent P&Z commission is an important aspect of reaching that objective. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to address the commission? Come on down. Please go ahead and state your name for the record.
Pamela Medford. I'm with Prescott Country Club. So I'm going to speak on the observatory project that Mr. Fain and his cohorts from Scottsdale and Phoenix want to jam down our throats. They're wanting 323 acres. He owns it, okay, there's no doubt about that. But he's also petitioning for a rezoning where he can bypass the 100-year water state law certification, and he can put anything and everything he wants on there. What he's got planned is 6 to 9 manufactured homes per acre. Per acre. That means they're going to be jammed in there just like they are up there on that hill off of 69, and it looks horrible, okay? He shouldn't be able to bypass the 100 state water law, okay? I have seen 2 aquifers, the Ogala and the Big Bertha, go down below their 10-foot zone of being able to sustain the irrigation and everything in Kansas, the Midwest, and in Oregon. So this 100-year thing is you keep bringing more people in, you keep bringing more people in. That 100-year goes down to 75, goes down to 50, goes down to 25. There is depletion. Now, Mr. Fain's idea on Lakeshore is that to do this and to do everything right, he's going to import water. Or he's going to capture rainwater. What, 10, 11 inches? Give me a break, okay? That's not even feasible to recharge the groundwater. that this city needs. And for some reason, people do not understand, and I'm looking at you people right here, you do not seem to understand. You're in a water crisis, okay? And to be able to do this out on 323 acres with these manufactured homes right next to Prescott Country Club, where people paid $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 for their homes and then have to have manufactured homes as their neighbor. Would you want that? Would you want that? Everybody is trying very hard in Prescott Country Club to maintain our home values, and then you're going to allow this, if you allow it. And I hope you don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, I'll close call to public, and I'll bring it back to the commission for the last final thing. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you.